ever since we started Masters of the Universe Classics, well, I guess you could say by year 2, once we knew what was a hit, we wanted to get Castle Grayskull into the line. And we assumed we were going to need a movie year because that would have meant we could release classics at retail as an adjunctive line to the retail statement, like 1 foot next to 3 foot of movie product. Little did we believe, or were we surprised, that it didn't take a movie year, but a hoverboard to get the castle made. Why was this? Well, when we revealed the hoverboard at New York Toy Fair, it became the #2 PR driver for the entire company. And this was a big deal because the company put a lot of work into things like Hot Wheels and Barbie and Fisher-Price. And to say the least, the other groups, when they found out that this one SKU from Matty Collector was outshining every other brand, let's just say there's a lot of office politics, and especially in the toy industry. But the hoverboard still did really well, and when management was focusing on revenue per SKU, it meant that they said, well, we may not have been ecstatic that the PR outshined everything else, but could you do it again? Because it meant a lot of money for one SKU, and this is the way, at the time, management was viewing success from a financial and a SKU count standpoint. So we made a huge presentation of why we were going to do the castle, and we had to show how it was so recognizable for the public, and that, well, it was the right SKU to bet on. Well, made a huge presentation, and my director said afterwards, in front of 200 people in this meeting I presented, what are you talking about? What is this challenge that you had to create another SKU like the hoverboard? I have no idea what you're talking about. And, well, I kind of felt like...
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
You see, it was that very VP who gave me the challenge at New York Toy Fair when they saw how well it performed. And, well, to say the least, she completely forgot about this. So here I was in front of 200 people, executives from across all the divisions, packaging, licensing, design, having to say, you were the one that challenged us to do this? Well, to say the least, the VP basically had to give us the green light because she was basically embarrassed in front of 200 people and realized she did challenge us to do this and totally forgot about it. So, yes, fans made this happen, but if it really wasn't for this particular VP challenging us months earlier in New York to basically recreate the hoverboard sales experience with a single SKU, a large item that could drive revenue, well, if she hadn't forgotten about this, we might not have gotten to do it. Now, the Castle Grayskull obviously is a big part of Masters of the Universe, as you saw a couple slides back. It's one of the most recognizable aspects of the brand, coming in over many of the main characters, as far as the mass public is concerned. And it was part of the line from day one. I mean, the King Grayskull figure launched in a Castle Grayskull package. Now, when we were designing it, we were absolutely doing it by the seat of our pants. There was no protocol, there was no previous template to follow, and we tried to put as much as we could into the castle. In fact, we put a lot more than we were going to be able to afford, because we didn't want this to be a $1,000 SKU. And in the end, a lot of the items that we originally thought we could fit, and by we, I mean the Horsemen and their brilliance, I mean, they did an amazing job. You cannot underestimate that or not play that off. But what we didn't have were things like what Hasbro has had with their HasLab program, which means upper management support and the ability to have 3D diagrams and all this stuff that you could share with customers. We basically had me and a pair of scissors because we had no budget, we had no protocol, we had no template. There was nothing like this had ever been done before at Mattel on this scale, doing a giant playset that was going to cost almost $500,000 in tooling. And basically we were doing everything we could to sell this in with, to say we had limited resources is not even doing it justice. And yes, the final castle came out smaller than the original drawing and the illustration. And I hated the fact that we couldn't live up to every inch, but it came down to logistics of production. But I did try to do everything I could to share every step of the way, showing the prototypes as it was tooled, sharing all of the measurements to show that it was still a very significant big piece. In the end, it came out to about 2 inches smaller than it was originally intended. Now, as far as what features we wanted to give it, and we knew this was, for He-Man's home, you want to give him the coolest features, to live in. Well, okay, I know He-Man doesn't live in the castle, I know that, but we looked at a lot of different iterations of the castle, especially the prototype, because the prototype included things like the torture room and the jetpack and different training devices, the punching bag. we wanted to find a way to incorporate as much of this as possible while still keeping the castle affordable. Every item we added or everything that we painted just drove the cost up. So it came a big tug of war. Some things were easy to do, like having a hidden door on the other side of the throne, which was the intention. That didn't cost extra tooling. You just had to have a die cut in the plastic. Or doing things like including the ledge. Much easier to do than including extra pieces, again, like the torture rack and the punching bop bag and little pieces that got dropped from the original prototype. That was going to cost additional tooling. We also originally wanted to include a stand for a potential Talon fighter, but again, we had to limit the number of things we could include because of the price point. We didn't want this to be $500 or $1,000. We wanted to keep it reasonable. So we looked at everything that came with the original Castle Grayskull and did our best to include all of those things, and things that were represented originally by cardboard cutouts. We were really excited that we were going to be able to do as 3D plastic painted objects, such as the computer here. It was really cool to see this actually come alive, and again, the horsemen are just amazing guys. They nailed it. And this was not easy to sculpt. I mean, the castle took them weeks to put together. Some of the items that were done as cardboard cutouts, like the spacesuit, we originally had wanted to do as a figure. We thought maybe this could be a pack-in figure, much like a lot of play sets and large vehicles get drivers or action figures included. But again, in the end, looking at the cost of doing this, it just wasn't going to work. So we had to do it as a non-articulated 3D element, but it was still scaled to figure. So you could pose it next to a figure on your shelf, kind of like a Staction figure or those Kevin Smith non-articulated Clerks figures. Some things, though, that were in the prototype, like the Batwing jetpack, we were able to include. It was easier to do this than something like the torture rack because, again, when you're presenting this to upper management and showing all the pieces that are included, they're going to look at you with a funny eye and say, you're including a torture rack? But including a jetpack makes sense. Action-oriented, straps on the back of a figure, totally much easier to sell that in than, a device used to torture people. So it was something we were so proud of. Even things like the secret door with the orb that also got included in the Mega Block set. I loved this because I was like, wow, we set the standard by including the orb holder. Now the Mega Block set is including this. One of the features that was highly, shall we say, controversial, questioned, was this. It was the hole in the floor that fans, rightly so, had kind of a big issue with. And that's because it was designed for the Wind Raider so that you could display it inside the castle. This was actually something the Horsemen came up with. They thought would be a really cool way to add to the diorama display. But man, if you didn't plug the Wind Raider stand into there, you wound up with this hole in the floor, and fans were pissed. But luckily, the amazing He-Man fans, some customizers, came up with a manhole cover that they sold on the aftermarket. I actually bought 3 of them myself. Kind of wish we did include this. It would have made so much sense to, have this so you could plug in the hole. And it looks actually really nice, like it's a secret passage or something. So, hey, you could, in the aftermarket, solve it that way. But yeah, it was just designed to add to the display and make it cooler. What are you going to do? At least the fans who are out there are way more talented than I am and extremely passionate. And honestly, I'm really glad they did this because I think it works well. Another thing that I personally really wanted in the castle was the back door. I wanted lots of secret entrances. I thought that was incredibly important. And the original castle had a door, but it didn't open. It was just outlined. And I thought, well, we need to actually have this door be something actionable, be a feature. Especially because Scareglow came with a key to Castle Grayskull. So the idea was, the key should fit into the door. That makes sense. That would be awesome. What a cool payoff. Well, I never had such a struggle between getting the key hole and having the throne have a slit so that obviously He-Man could sit in it, but if you wanted the sorceress to sit in it, the feathers got in the way. But by having a slit in the back, the feathers went into the throne so that the sorceress could sit in there. Man, Steed's son, who was the VP of design, he was Ruben's boss, fought me on this. I'd never had such a fight in my entire toy career. He just was so angry that a marketing person was telling design what to do. It's like, it's design's job to design the castle. Marketing, stay out of it. Luckily, Heather Litfin, who was my direct boss, and unfortunately this is the only image of her I could find online. Sorry, Heather, I think I borrowed this from your LinkedIn page. She came to bat for me and was like, look, Steed, you have to go with Scott. He's connected to the fans. He knows what they want. Put the keyhole in. Put the slit in the throne. Steed was so angry at me. especially when I also had to come back a few weeks later and ask him to lower the jaw bridge so that He-Man and She-Ra could actually fit through the door. Design just, again, it was office politics, but they felt that a marketing person had no right to tell them what to do. But I was like, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what the fans are saying. This is what they want. They're going to be happy if the door actually works. Well, the fans won. And, or at least, I was able to show, all the requests online and present this at another meeting with upper management, and we got all those features in. It was a battle. One other thing we wanted to do to reward the fans was to let them choose the characters that would be on the box art, which we commissioned the same artist who did the original art for the 1982 Castle, which was Rudy Obrero. And he knocked it out of the park. Fans voted, and it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that it was the main characters that won. Although I have to say, almost every character got votes. Even Mighty Spector, I remember, had 11 votes to be on the castle. So 11 people wanted that. Not me, I promise, I didn't vote. And of course, the box had other sides too, which we maximized by including things like an all-new bio, telling how the castle was built. And I worked with Eric at the Four Horsemen, really talking about how he sculpted the castle, starting with small boulders and working his way to the top, and built it all around this skull stone. So based on his description, I was able to craft that bio. Came a long way from a doodle on a piece of paper with absolutely no precedent. The entire team that worked on this, and I'm including, the designers, packaging, the horsemen, legal, logistics, it was a blast, but it was also a nightmare because there wasn't a procedure for doing this. Unlike almost everything else Mattel does, it fits nicely in a bucket. And it's like, okay, we produced Hot Wheels last year, we're going to produce Hot Wheels this year. No one had done a giant playset sold online that was going to cost $500,000 in tooling. But when we finally revealed it at not New York Comic-Con, it's San Diego Comic-Con, complete with a, beautiful spokesmodel, I was so proud. This was such an amazing thing, and the fans made it happen by pre-ordering. It would have never happened if the fans didn't step up and pre-order. It was by far the biggest Castle Grayskull that has ever been done, and when you compare it to the original, you can really see where all of the prototype concepts, like the pawn on top and that ledge, really showed that this castle looked like the one from the mini comics and all of that early artwork. When it was shown at New York Toy Fair, every single member of the press rushed over to it. And again, there was a lot of mumbling from the other groups, like, wait a minute, what about Hot Wheels and Barbie over, to the left? We're trying to sell those in, but nobody wanted anything to do with anything but the castle when we revealed it. Even today, the castle sits in my office. I am so proud of this, and I'm so glad the fans stepped up, because it could have never happened without them. This was a fan-driven project out of love, out of joy, and I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. It was worth it, and I really think it's the capstone of the entire Masters of the Universe Classics line.